In ancient Egypt, the Israelites lived as slaves under the harsh rule of the pharaohs. For generations, they toiled under the scorching sun, building magnificent monuments for their oppressors. Their cries for freedom echoed through the land, unheard by their taskmasters. During this time of great hardship, a Hebrew woman gave birth to a son. Fearing for his life due to Pharaoh's decree to kill all Hebrew boys, she hid him for 3 months. When she could conceal him no longer, she placed him in a basket and set it afloat on the Nile River, hoping for a miracle. As fate would have it, Pharaoh's daughter discovered the basket while bathing in the river. Moved by compassion, she adopted the child as her own, naming him Moses, which means drawn out of the water. Thus, Moses, born a slave, found himself raised in the opulent halls of Pharaoh's palace, unaware of his true heritage and the incredible destiny that awaited him. As Moses grew into a man, he became aware of his people's suffering. One day, witnessing an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, Moses was overcome with rage. In a moment of passion, he struck down the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. When Pharaoh learned of this, Moses was forced to flee Egypt, leaving behind the only life he had ever known. Moses journeyed to the land of Midian, where he found refuge. There, he became a shepherd, tending to the flocks of Jethro, a Midianite priest. For 40 years, Moses lived a simple life in the wilderness, marrying Jethro's daughter Zipporah and starting a family. The palace and his former life in Egypt became distant memories. One day, while tending his flock near Mount Horeb, Moses witnessed an extraordinary sight. A bush that burned with fire yet was not consumed. As he approached this marvel, he heard the voice of God calling out to him. "Moses, Moses," the voice said. "Here I am," Moses replied, unaware that this moment would change his life and the fate of his people forever. Empowered by God's command, Moses returned to Egypt with his brother Aaron. They approached Pharaoh, demanding freedom for the Israelites. "Let my people go," Moses declared, his voice echoing through the palace halls. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused, scoffing at their request and the God they served. Undeterred, Moses and Aaron continued to confront Pharaoh. Each time, their demands were met with stubborn refusal. Pharaoh, believing himself a god among men, saw no reason to yield to the requests of a former prince turned shepherd. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown between the power of Egypt and the power of the Israelites' God. As Pharaoh's defiance grew, so did God's response. The first of 10 plagues struck Egypt. The waters of the Nile turned to blood, rendering it undrinkable. Fish died, and a putrid smell filled the air. Yet Pharaoh remained unmoved. This was just the beginning of a series of supernatural disasters that would rock Egypt to its very foundations, each plague a testament to God's power and Pharaoh's stubborn pride. As Pharaoh's resistance continued, more plagues befell Egypt. Frogs overran the land, followed by gnats and flies. Livestock perished, boils afflicted the people, and hail destroyed crops. Locusts devoured what remained, and darkness shrouded Egypt for 3 days. Each plague was a chance for Pharaoh to relent, but his heart remained hardened. Finally, God announced the most terrible plague of all, the death of every firstborn in Egypt. Moses warned Pharaoh, but his words fell on deaf ears. That night, the Israelites marked their doors with lamb's blood and stayed inside. As midnight struck, a great cry arose from every Egyptian household as the firstborn, from Pharaoh's heir to the lowliest servant's child, died. Overwhelmed by grief and fear, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron in the dark of night. His voice trembling, he ordered, "Rise up, go out from among my people, both you and the Israelites." The time had come. After generations of bondage, the Israelites were free to leave. In haste, they gathered their belongings and departed, a great multitude setting out on a journey that would become legend. As the Israelites journeyed towards freedom, Pharaoh's grief turned to anger. Regretting his decision, he rallied his army and set out in pursuit. The Israelites, encamped by the Red Sea, saw the approaching Egyptian forces and panicked. But Moses, trusting in God's promise, raised his staff over the waters. Miraculously, the sea parted, revealing a path of dry land. The Israelites hurried across, walls of water towering on either side. As dawn broke, the last Israelite reached the far shore. The Egyptian army, in hot pursuit, followed them into the seabed. But as they reached the middle, Moses stretched out his hand once more. The waters crashed down, engulfing Pharaoh's entire army. Standing on the shore, the Israelites watched in awe as the sea settled, leaving no trace of their pursuers. For the first time in generations, they tasted true freedom. Their journey was far from over. The promised land still lay ahead. But in that moment, as Moses led them in a song of praise, they knew that their God had delivered them, turning slaves into a free nation. Their exodus would be remembered for all time, a testament to faith, courage, and the power of divine intervention.